Tensions between the US and Canada are hitting a boiling point, and Canadians are taking matters into their own hands. Starting with their shopping carts, a massive wave of patriotic spending is sweeping the country, with hundreds of thousands of Canadians vowing to ditch American brands in favour of homegrown alternatives. The movement, dubbed by Canadians, is growing at lightning speed, with online communities swelling to over 500,000 members. Social media feeds are packed with proud shoppers showing off their all-Canadian grocery hauls, while supermarkets are plastering shelves with bold Made in Canada signs. But this isn't just about skipping Starbucks or swapping out Kraft Mac and cheese. It's an economic statement, a loud and clear message that Canadians won't be pushed around. The spark: US President Donald Trump's looming threat to slap a hefty 25% tariff on Canadian goods. With February 1st fast approaching, anxiety is rising. If the tariffs take effect, everything from food to fuel could get caught in the crossfire, leading to skyrocketing prices and economic uncertainty. In response, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau isn't backing down. His government is gearing up for a counterstrike, preparing retaliatory measures to protect Canadian businesses. But while politicians trade blows, everyday shoppers are launching a grassroots rebellion of their own. Across the country, grocery stores are adjusting to the shifting tide. Some retailers are redesigning aisles to highlight local products, while independent grocers are rolling out Made in Canada tags to help consumers make patriotic choices. And it's not just grocery chains. Restaurants, cafes, and small businesses are also proudly promoting Canadian suppliers. One shopper, Peggy Chambers, says she now triple checks labels before tossing anything into her cart. "I've always tried to support Canadian products, but now it feels like a responsibility," she says. "As long as it's not made in the US, I feel like I'm making a difference." Meanwhile, viral shopping guides are flooding social media, offering Canadians a clear-cut roadmap for avoiding American imports. The lists pit big-name US brands against their Canadian counterparts, recommending homegrown snack foods, condiments, and household products over popular American staples like Campbell's Soup, Lysol, and Pepsi. But experts warn it's not always that simple. Some US brands rely on Canadian farmers and manufacturers, blurring the lines between domestic and foreign goods. Still, for many, this isn't just about labels. It's about making a stand. It all started with a decision from US President Donald Trump. He threatened to slap a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, with an extra 10% on energy exports. That sent shockwaves through Canada's economy. But instead of waiting for politicians to sort things out, regular people took action across the country. Shoppers are making a point to buy Canadian. Social media is flooded with tips on avoiding American brands, and lists comparing US products to homegrown alternatives are going viral. Even grocery stores are getting in on the movement, adding special tags to help customers identify Canadian-made goods. For some, it's an easy switch. Dairy, meat, and in-season produce are almost always local. But when it comes to packaged foods, cleaning products, or fresh fruit in the winter, things get trickier. Ottawa resident Don Profit sums up the new mindset: "If it's made in Canada, it's going in my cart." This shift in spending is about more than just groceries. It's an act of defiance, a way to send a message. Even Canadian officials are backing the movement. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau himself urged people to support Canadian businesses, while his government is preparing countermeasures against Trump's tariffs, targeting billions of dollars in American goods. But not everyone is celebrating. Some, Experts warn that buying Canadian isn't always as straightforward as it sounds. Many American brands rely on Canadian farmers and factories, and boycotting them could hurt local jobs without anyone realizing it. Sivan Charlis, a food industry expert, says the key is knowing where products actually come from. If you just look at the brand name, you might think you're making the right choice, but you could be cutting off Canadian workers without even knowing it. Still, many consumers are sticking with the movement, determined to make a difference. Peggy Chambers, a longtime supporter of Canadian goods, says the extra effort is worth it. It takes time, but I'd rather support my own country than put money in American pockets. Of course, not everything can be sourced locally. Canada's long winters mean that fresh fruits and vegetables often have to be imported. That's where another tip comes in: frozen foods. Many frozen fruits and veggies are packaged in Canada, making them a smart alternative when fresh options aren't available. Beyond the grocery aisles, the economic impact of this shift is massive. While Canadian farmers and manufacturers see a surge in demand, rely on US trade are bracing for trouble. Pierre Oliver, who runs a model train company in St. Thomas, Ontario, is worried. His business depends almost entirely on American customers. If tariffs go into effect, he may have no choice but to raise prices, something that could drive customers away for good. And it's not just small businesses feeling the pressure. If the Buy Canadian movement keeps growing, major retailers may struggle to keep up with demand for local products. Prices could rise, choices could shrink, and the ripple effects could touch nearly every corner of the economy. In the face of Trump's tariff threat, Canada isn't sitting back. Trudeau's government is preparing to hit back with tariffs of its own, targeting billions in US exports. The strategy focuses on goods from politically sensitive states, things like Florida orange juice and Kentucky bourbon. The idea is to put pressure on Trump's allies, making them rethink the trade war. But it's not just about shopping habits or taxes. The tension is spilling over into everyday life. Reports have surfaced of Canadian crowds booing the US national anthem at sports events. Some people say they feel betrayed by their southern neighbor, a country that was supposed to be an ally. Energy is another powerful bargaining chip. Canada is the largest supplier of crude oil to the US and a key provider of electricity to northeastern states. Some leaders, like Ontario Premier Doug Ford, have floated the idea of cutting off energy exports to push back against US policies. However, not everyone is on board with that plan. Provinces like Alberta, which depend on oil exports, warn that shutting down the flow of energy could backfire, hurting Canada more than the US, untangling Canada and the US from each other's economies is like trying to separate two colors of paint after they've already been mixed. They're deeply connected, and pulling them apart is proving to be messy, complicated, and full of unintended consequences. As both countries navigate this growing trade standoff, the challenge is clear. Canada wants to push back against unfair tariffs without causing more harm to its biggest trading partner. The US, on the other hand, is trying to assert economic dominance without triggering full-scale retaliation. Behind the scenes, government officials are scrambling to find a way forward. High-level meetings, urgent strategy sessions, and quiet back-channel talks have been happening for weeks. But with pressure mounting, the big question remains: how far is Canada willing to go? Some believe that responding with counter-tariffs is the only way to make the US take notice. Others worry that escalating the fight could hurt both sides, pushing businesses into uncertainty and shaking investor confidence. I think the US was hoping Canada wouldn't fight back, says one economics analyst. They expected some frustration, sure, but not a full-scale response. If Canada retaliates, the damage won't just be to one side. It'll hit both economies hard, and it's not just about trade anymore. For many Canadians, this is about something bigger: national pride. Every dollar spent on homegrown products feels like a small act of defiance. It's a statement: we don't need the US to survive. But there's a catch. Canada's economy relies on the US more than most people realize. The two countries have built their industries side by side, with supply chains so intertwined that boycotting US goods isn't always as straightforward as it seems. Many American companies rely on Canadian suppliers and vice versa. Take the tech industry. Canadian startups want to support the Buy Canadian movement, but they also depend on American partnerships, investors, and customers. Cutting ties with the US market would mean shrinking opportunities and lost revenue. Meanwhile, other industries are discovering their strengths and weaknesses. Agriculture, for example, is one of Canada's strongest sectors. But winter makes it hard to rely solely on homegrown produce. The push for Canadian-grown food is driving new investments in greenhouse farming and vertical agriculture, but scaling up will take time. Dairy farmers, who have long been a sticking point in US-Canada trade deals, are seeing renewed interest in their products. With fewer Canadians buying American dairy brands, local farms are working to expand their reach and even explore new export markets outside North America. Manufacturers are also rethinking their supply chains. Many are searching for ways to produce goods entirely within Canada, reducing dependence on US imports. If successful, this shift could breathe new life into Canada's manufacturing sector, creating jobs and sparking innovation. But while some industries see opportunity, others see trouble ahead.